Hey, welcome to Connection Over Coffee with me, Phil McAuliffe, the Loneliness Guy. In this episode, we're going to have a chat about how you and I are tracking on our year of authentic connection. We're going to do a check-in exercise together. But before we get into it, I do need to say that this podcast is all about destigmatizing loneliness and promoting authentic connection for gay men globally. It contains content relating to the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of gay men. If that's going to offend you or anyone in earshot, now's the time for you to go. So with all of that said, it's great to see you again. How about you go and find a seat and I'll go get the coffees. Okay, here you go. If this is the first time that you and I have connected over coffee, I want to say hi, welcome. It's so great to have you here. And if you're coming back for another coffee with me, I want to say, hey, it's so good to see you again. And whether you're joining me here on the podcast, through my website, lonelinessguide.com, or through a streaming service for a podcast, or indeed watching on YouTube, I want to say wherever you are, however you're consuming this, however you're going to be having coffee with me today, I just want to say hi, and it's so good to have you here. And I particularly want to say how proud I am of you, whether you're a first-time coffee getter with me, or this is your second or multiple times having coffee with me. I want to say how proud I am of you for doing what you did within yourself to simply press play on this episode, however you're consuming it, because the thoughts and feelings of loneliness are horrible, and they have us thinking and feeling some horrible thoughts and feeling some horrible feelings. And the very idea that we may be, as gay men, lonely is just dripping in judgment and stigma. And it doesn't have to be this way. And that's what this podcast, my work, is all about, in the destigmatizing of loneliness, and how we as gay men can connect authentically as our real human, awesomely messy selves with ourselves and those most important to us and our community. So I want to say it's so good on many, many levels to have you here. And if you have if we've been having coffee together over the last year, you would notice that I've taken a little break of a few months. And indeed, if you've been binging on my content, you'll know that between episode 24 and episode 25, episode 24 was the first check-in for the year of authentic connection 2021. And episode 25, this episode, is all about doing a second check-in. Now, if you've just binged it, there's probably been about a minute between both of those check-ins, but here in real life, it's been about 4 months. So I took 4 months away, and as my partner and I and my kids settled into life here in Canberra. So it's so good to be back with you, and I'll get into that in a little while in my check-in. So if I really have missed having chats with you here on YouTube or on the podcast, or indeed through my blog or social media content. So yeah, a bit of life has gone on, and I want to get into that in a little bit with my check-in. But the whole check-in, the concept that I'm talking about, if you've not read it yet, go to the latest the latest blog post on my website, The Loneliness Guy, and there's an exercise there about how we can check to see our progress for 2021. this far in 2021, it's July now, and we get to review our progress in making 2021 our year of authentic connection. And this year of authentic connection was the topic of the very first blog post and podcast episode for 2021. Simply, the year of authentic connection is that we are in our glorious, messy, human, fabulously gay selves, working out how to move beyond our loneliness and then put our real, authentic, glorious selves into the world. And look, pardon me, but this is a bit shit your pants scary at times, and it's meant to be. It's meant to be. I was going to apologize for that if it was, if you were feeling that kind of shit your pants scared. You're meant to be. You're meant to be just a little bit scared, because that's like a really good indicator, I find, that you're being open, you're being vulnerable, and you're risking a whole lot of potentially bad things happening to you. So I'll dig into the exercise in case you haven't read it and you're not much of a reader. I'll go through the questions now and invite you, as I read the questions, press pause on me. I promise I'll be back when you press unpause or press play. And we shall go through each of these questions, and I invite you to reflect, write it down, not reflect in your mind. You need to write it down critically. This is all about writing it down and getting it out of your head, and you can look at it objectively without the voices in your head going, oh, you shouldn't feel that, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that, that's not good, you shouldn't, all the shoulds. We can avoid the shoulds when we write it down. All right, so if you've got a pen and you've got a piece of paper, I go old school in this. Don't do it on your phone. Like there's something really important in the literal writing of this down. So get yourself a nice piece of paper, get yourself a nice pen or a pencil or any kind of writing implement, and let's crack into it. So the first question in this check-in, so thinking between the first progress check-in, which was in March, and now to July, during that period of time, how connected to yourself have you felt? How have you been actively choosing to put your authentic self into the world? That was question 1. Question 2. How connected to those most important to you have you felt? How did it feel to reach out to them to start some authentic connection? Number 3, how connected to your community have you felt? And how are you defining community? Number 4, have you been setting weekly connection intentions? And number 5, if you've not actively done connection, what have you chosen to do instead? That's it. That's the 5 questions. Now, if you need a little bit of time, you obviously know how to rewind this podcast and this video on YouTube, so you can go back and get those. And if you do need them in writing because you can't understand my Australian accent, then they are obviously in writing on the blog, and there's going to be a link in the show notes on this episode, however you're watching. But I want to just share with you some of the things that have been going on with me over the last few months, and particularly when it comes to connecting with my community. And community is a beautiful word. I love sort of reflecting on words and the power of words, because they hold so much so many little insights into how we interact with each other, how we interact with ourselves, within ourselves, and how we interact with our communities. And community is a beautiful word because it can mean so many different things, but at its core, it's something that is wider than us. And there's so much power in feeling that we belong to a community however we feel it. And so we can feel power in community if we belong to the community of, for instance, the premium members group of the Loneliness Guy, and in the private Facebook group. You can feel that you belong there. You can feel that you can belong in your location, like wherever you are in the world. Like, you could be volunteering at a local charity. You could be being active in the community somehow. And community can also cover places and events in life, like our work. And so for me, I'll spare you lots of the details. But I started a new job. And that job was exciting and great. And there was a well-established, high-functioning team of people there, and who were operating at a level that was just sort of getting everything done. And I found that when after a little while, I began feeling within myself like I was struggling. I was struggling to keep up with everything that was going on around me, and that was not necessarily a bad thing, and within myself. But one thing that I did find that I was doing, not only in the workplace, but in other places in this new community, was hustling to feel that I belonged. And for me, the hustle is hustling to feel that I belong is a sure sign for me, within me, that I am feeling disconnected with myself. And I'll tell you why. Because I find so much power in the words and writings of the late Dr. Maya Angelou. And she wrote a very profound, or she spoke something very profound in an interview in the 70s about belonging. And for me, this reminds me that if I am hustling to belong outside of me, I need to stop and hustle within me to belong back to myself, to come back to that which I know is true for me. So come back to working, as my friend, coach and mentor, Mike Campbell says, come back to working in alignment with myself, where my words, thoughts, and actions correlate with or are in alignment with my values and beliefs. And so these words by Dr. Maya Angelou, as I am going to read these, because her words are just so profound, and these really did change my life. And she spoke, "You only are free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. The price is high and the reward is great." Now, if you have been following me for a little while, you know that I've been on this huge sort of experience of life over the last few years, and as a consequence of like pulling the thread of and getting curious about my loneliness. That is and belonging to myself after decades, almost my entire life, of feeling that I didn't belong anywhere. I never really truly fit in classrooms, in lecture theatres, in social settings. I'd never really felt, I should say, that I truly belonged. And That's not to say that those around me didn't want me to belong and weren't being kind and, inclusive and things. Not at all. Not at all. It's because I didn't belong to myself. I didn't allow myself to be seen. I didn't want to see myself. I didn't want to listen to what, my thoughts and feelings. I didn't want to listen. And so as a consequence, I didn't belong to myself. And Dr. Angelou's words really are so profound. They are like, they live within me. And so when I find myself hustling to belong outside of me, I now know sooner rather than later, no, it's not immediate, and I don't get this right every time, and this is part of the reflection of the check-in over the last few months. It can take me a little while to go, why do I feel so like crap within myself? Why is there, as my friend Reno said in the podcast episode that we did back in at the beginning of this year, why do I feel such dis-ease within myself? And that's me being out of integrity. And in this instance, in this specific example, I was hustling to be accepted into a team. And I was wanting to do things that were not sitting well within me. And I began to pay the price for that. I felt really dis-eased within myself. One could say unease, but I'm going with the whole dis-eased thing from Reno. And I reflected on it, and I have some awesome people in my team, including my fantastic partner, Jeff, who I spoke with, and kind of in speaking that, in being vulnerable with the people that matter most to me, and being vulnerable within myself, I reflected over a few days about what I was doing and where this was coming from. And Dr. Angelou's words came roaring back to me that when I want to belong so many other places, I need to remember that I always belong to me, and I need to simply, if only it was simple. It's simple to say, it's like really hard to do, but simply come back to me and remind myself that I belong to me. The good, the bad, the light, the dark, the yin, the yang, all the bits that I want to show the world and all the bits that I don't want the world to see. I need to belong to all of it. I need to allow myself to belong to that. So that for me was my check-in. Well, sorry, I've stopped that before I'd finished it. How I got out of that was the kind but very firm application of boundaries, and started having open, honest, kind conversations with people around me in the workplace about how I could sort of work in another way that would be advantageous for everyone, including me. And part of that was knowing my boundaries. And as we've said in previous conversations over coffee, it's easy to say you have boundaries. It's really hard to employ them. And I know that because I continually remind myself that I need to come back and maintain my boundaries and communicate them, and not critically apologize for them. So how are you going? How have you been going in wanting to feel that you are seen, heard, and belong in your community over the last few months? Have you got like an example on a similar of something similar that you've noticed within yourself or around you over the last few months? I'd really love to hear it. So if you've got any comments on to share with me, please feel free to drop me a line on social media, or send me an email, and to connect at thelonelinessguy.com. I'd love to connect with you and find out what's going on. And indeed, if you do want to, a safe place to do this and get support is actually my premium subscribers group, which for the first month it's free. But afterwards, it's $9.95 Australian dollars per month thereafter. And this is a place where you can actually sort of share those kind of experiences and get some support from me and others in the group who are all doing the same thing. We're all living our lives. So yeah, that was me on one of the main things that I wanted to tell you about in terms of the check-in, what's been going on with me connection-wise. So it did feel like I was, trying very hard to connect with other people, but I needed to connect with myself first and then put me out into that community in this instance, in the wider workplace. And, day by day, it goes, and but I don't feel as dis-eased within myself. I do feel a lot more that I am me, and I am bringing me to that part of my life again. The other thing that I wanted to share with you in terms of, it goes to community, it goes to connection with community, it goes to connection with self, and it goes to connection with those most important to me, which are the 3 pillars of connection, which are a cornerstone of my work. So during this time, I really didn't do much on the Loneliness Guy or my other work on the Lonely Diplomat. I didn't do much work at all. And when inspiration struck, I'd kind of type down a few words and really sort of just get some ideas out of my head to come back to at another time. But then a few weeks ago, I took a week off. The kids had school holidays, so I took a week off to be with them. And during each of those days, I spent an hour and an hour of power writing. So remove distractions and just smash something out for an hour. And in doing that, I rediscovered the joy of writing. I rediscovered the joy of connecting to you and connecting with what's going on within me by writing. I reconnected with that, and it brought me joy. And then soon after doing that, I spoke with, I had a chat with my friend Michael Diorio, who's been on Connection Over Coffee a few times. And Michael, if you're listening, hey, and has been on a few times. And he and I were having a bit of a chat. And he asked me to be on the Gay Men's Brotherhood podcast, Gay Men Going Deeper. And we talked about loneliness and belonging. So if you've listened to that, you've already heard the Maya Angelou bit. But if you haven't listened to it, do go and listen to it, and join the fantastic Facebook group there at Gay Men's Brotherhood. But he and I had a fantastic chat. And then not soon, probably 20 minutes after we hung up from that chat, it was done over Zoom, my friend Mike Campbell, with whom I do coaching work on his coaching program, and I did his coaching program. I was one of his clients. He reached out to me and said, "Phil, can we have a chat about loneliness on on his Everyday Legends podcast?" And so within the space of 2 days, I had these 2 amazing conversations that reignited the flame in me. Maybe not reignited, the flame was always there, but threw a couple of big logs on there and turned, just a smoldering fire into a raging bonfire. And I felt reconnected back to my purpose, about what I love doing, about sitting here, talking into a microphone, speaking into a camera, to connect with you over this cup of coffee, wherever you are in the world and however you're consuming this content. The conversations were real, they were honest, and they were fun. And each time, and go and listen to them, to them, because in each time I started off really nervously, and I was kind of, and I said as much in Mike's podcast that, I was shaking, and it wasn't just because I was cold, and it's because, vulnerability, to me, being vulnerable still requires me to dig into my reserves of courage. Each and every time when I'm talking about my story, I'm sharing my story because I want to know that my work is helping someone somewhere who might be struggling with the awful thoughts and feelings of loneliness, or struggling with the thoughts and feelings of anything, whether that's our sexuality or, whatever we struggle with within ourselves. To know that, vulnerability is not the domain of someone else. For me, it's each and every time, it's really scary. It's, as I said earlier in this chat, it's shit my pants scary. But I did it, and then had, towards the end of each conversation, I just had so much going on in me that I just couldn't contain it. And it's happening again here. And this is me listening to what's going on within myself as I'm talking to you right now, is that I really just am so enlivened by my purpose here. That was said in a real Australian accent, wasn't it? It's like my purpose. So I'm really just, I'm enlivened by it. I feel nourished and just want to let you know that wherever you are in the world, as you're wrestling with the thoughts and feelings of loneliness, and indeed you may have done the check-in and you realize that you've not really made any progress at all, and you might be feeling bad about that. Please don't feel bad. Please know that I'm giving you an enormous hug right now and saying, yep, it sometimes really sucks to be human and to need to connect, particularly when we have been grappling with the awful thoughts and feelings, the void even of chronic loneliness, and it's become our kind of default state, our default way of engaging within ourselves, with those most important to us, and to our communities. And it might actually feel that we don't belong to one or two or three of those pillars. I get it. And I get the huge amount of courage that it can take to try something different, to try something new, to imperfectly put ourselves out there, to engage with other people, to engage in our communities, and to engage within ourselves and risk judgment. That is terrifying. But it's the only way that we can do it. And indeed, I say this from a place of love, is that once we realize that we are lonely, chronically or otherwise, and we are not choosing connection, we're not wanting to take a step, just a step. If we're not choosing to take a step, forward, sideways, backwards, whatever it is, it's a step, it's doing something. We are choosing our loneliness. And it doesn't have to be this way. It does not have to be this way. And indeed, you are paying a price, physically, mentally, and emotionally, for not taking a step. And here's the thing, here's the beautiful thing, you're not meant to take a step alone either. You can take the step, the path back to connection is done with other people. And again, there's a premium subscribers group that I'd love for you to join if you feel called, feel that, I can help you, we can help you take a step to put your awesome, beautiful self into the world. Just a little bit. And then we'll do it again. And then we'll do it again. Because I can tell you that that's the way to coming back to ourselves and to be ourselves with those most important to us and to our communities. Okay. I think that's it for this coffee. So if you've got any questions for me, please do send me a message on social media. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram and Facebook at The Loneliness Guy. And if you want to send me an email, send your email to connect@thelonelinessguy.com. You can join the premium subscribers group. There's going to be a link in the episode description. But yeah, there's no wrong way of reaching out and giving feedback. I'd love to hear feedback. I'd love to hear your experience from your check-in, your reflections, what you learned about yourself, what you were proud about yourself. That's the other thing as well. We can get down on ourselves. How did I forget that? We can get so down on ourselves when we don't do connection right that we can forget to be proud of ourselves for doing something. So, in case you're not proud of yourself, know that I'm very proud of you for doing a thing. I'm sure you did it awesomely, even if it felt really terrifying. All right. So I'd really appreciate it if you could give this episode and my podcast a high rating wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube. That really does help get it in front of eyes and ears of other gay men. And know also that the best reference is word of mouth. So do feel free to talk about my work, talk about me, talk about my work with your friends, to let them know as gay men that they're not alone in experiencing loneliness. Even if we don't really talk about loneliness, we all experience loneliness from time to time. So again, all right, that's it. Again, that's it. And I'll speak to you in the next episode in a couple of weeks, which is going to be a cracking episode. And so until next time, be awesomely, just awesomely you. Stay well, stay kind, and keep giving the world the best of you at that moment. And the best of you is just as you are. All right, I'll see you later.